We can do it.
Welcome back to Festival of Place, the Pineapples, in association with the Design Council. Great to have you all here, and I'm delighted to be with you. As you know, this is a unique event where we bring together developers, designers, placemakers from across the built environment to share their work. This is the second session of the community, no, it's not the third session of the community engagement category of projects, and all of our projects here are vying to win that golden pineapple for their initiative to meaningfully involve the community in the creation, design, evolution, development or maintenance of a place. That engagement can be digital or physical or a mixture of the two often. The judges will be considering how the initiative has connected with stakeholders and citizens and how their feedback has meaningfully contributed to the design or development process. We have 6 projects shortlisted for this category, and each team has just 10 minutes to present their project. We then follow on with 10 minutes of questions from our judges. To keep it all fair, I'm going to be keeping a close eye on the stopwatch, so apologies in advance for slightly ruining your flow and leaping in at 9 minutes and telling you that you've got a minute to go, but just helps to make sure everyone gets the same amount of time and we all keep to track. So you'll be meeting the judges in more detail in a little while, but just quickly to introduce them to you before we kick off, we have Amina Ricks, who's architect, urbanist, writer and teacher, and Amina's focus is on involving children in the process of improving our cities. We have with us also Ben Adams, who's founding architect at Ben Adams Architects. His work is underpinned by 3 important principles, and those are simple ideas, design excellence and innovation through research. And finally, on our judging panel, we have Vicky Brown, architect at Make Architects. Vicky led the development of the delivery of Make's flagship regeneration scheme in St James's Market and has a wide and varied portfolio to her name. So a formidable bunch of judges who have been asking insightful questions and putting our contenders through their paces this morning, and will continue to do so. So the moment has arrived for our 5th presentation of the day. The Bermondsey Project in London. This project saw 7 years of community engagement across digital, print and in-person events, which is now feeding into the creation of a community forum of 20 representatives to help guide the delivery and social impact during phase 1 of the regeneration project. So to tell us a lot more about it, I'd like to welcome Kate Nottidge and Heather Topel from Grosvenor, Britain and Ireland, and we look very much forward to hearing from you. The stage is yours. I shall hand over to you.
Great, thank you very much. Kate, you're driving, so I'm hoping that at some point our hat will show up on screen. By way of introduction, I'm Heather Topel. I am a development director at Grosvenor, and I'm responsible for the delivery of our development in Bermondsey. And Kate is our head of stakeholder engagement and has been involved in seeing this through from our first initial engagement with our future neighbours through to today. And this is really a story of how we have explored becoming a part of Bermondsey and how we are using our relationships that we have established with our neighbours and our future community to inform how the site will develop. So just by way of background, this is the development site that we're talking about and how it's structured today. So to get your bearings, the Thames is at the top of the page. You can see the railway line running sort of through the bottom third of it. It runs to London Bridge, just off screen. Southwark Park to the right of that image. And the site that we are discussing today is the former Peak Freem's biscuit factory. So if you've had a Garibaldi or a Twiglet, you owe it to the historic uses of this site, which sadly has not been in use for decades. But it was very clear to us as we started to explore what the future opportunities were for this site that we needed to get under the skin really of this community, because the relationship between the surrounding areas and what was known as Biscuit Town, in fact, from the relationship that people had with the former biscuit factory is so important in terms of thinking about how we sort of establish links, develop character, and set a course for the future opportunities. And that's both about housing and about wider economic development. In time, the development will include about 1,500 homes that are for rent, of which about a third of them are affordable homes. A new secondary school, extensive areas of play and public realm, also employment space that include not insignificant amounts of employment space, including affordable workspace. And that will create on-site somewhere near 3,000 jobs. We also are anticipating that we are looking to the future here. We are not expecting that we are developing, selling, and leaving. This is very much part of our long-term plans, and therefore thinking about how we can develop responsibly and also robustly and sensitively is important. And so you can see on screen some of the environmental commitments that we've made alongside economic ones that Kate will talk about in more detail. And we really do hope that in time, we're expecting to complete our first phase in 2024, this will be a place of Bermondsey that will connect our new community to the existing ones.
Thanks, Heather. So our starting point, long before we actually began developing the designs, was to develop a deep understanding of the area, its people, their interests, and that was really a whole team effort that involved spending an awful lot of time in Bermondsey, recording hopes and aspirations via a co-curated mural that you can see on the top image there, taking a large-scale map around the community to a stall at the market, asking people to pin places they particularly liked and draw their routes through the neighbourhood, and identifying priority areas through a digital mapping exercise in partnership with the local business improvement district. And over time, by letting local people get to know us and by putting in the effort to get to know them, their neighbourhood, we began building trust, making a few friends along the way, and certainly learning a lot too. So several years into that process, we began actually developing the proposals with a design brief that had been shaped by what we had learnt, and a design team would become a part of Bermondsey too. And there are probably 5 core ideas that really rooted our approach here. So one, that we would engage widely with stakeholder mapping and open process on and offline channels. And we captured groups that we wouldn't usually by offering a community space free of charge, for example. The second idea is that we would lead from the front. So it was really important to us that Grosvenor led and delivered this engagement directly. We didn't want our engagement with the community to be through a third party, and we also didn't want our engagement to be confined to the specific milestones in the design and planning process. So that's connected to our third idea there, that we really wanted to keep this conversation going and avoid that stop-start nature that is so typical with a planning-focused engagement programme, and instead build an ongoing conversation that could be sustained over time. So, for example, in between design development phases, we took an archaeology truck to a local festival, talked about the site in a very different way, and again, engaged people who wouldn't typically come to a consultation event but were interested in local history, for example. The fourth idea, that we would relinquish control, so allowing the community to directly influence decisions such as the location for the school, the types of open spaces, the retention of some buildings. And fifthly, that we would be innovative. So we produced a physical walkthrough of the proposals in a vacant warehouse, as you can see in the top image, and piloted various visualisation technologies. It's probably worth saying here as well that this was a learning experience for Grosvenor. It wasn't necessarily our normal approach, but the benefits have been so clear that it is in part which led to the development of our company's very first community charter, which we published last year and is called Positive Space. That aims to build the confidence and the capabilities of our people to work meaningfully with communities in all the neighbourhoods that we help to make and manage. However, what I believe really sets apart our approach here is the role we've played as a partner and an enabler in Bermondsey. So in tandem to that consultation process, we ran a programme of community investment focused on addressing what we had learnt about in that listening phase and enabling local organisations already working in the neighbourhood to support local people. And to guide those efforts, we developed what we called a local legacy strategy, which focused on the 4 key themes you can see listed, and saw us invest almost £500,000 in local projects and interim uses. For example, pictured we have Mike, the founder of an amazing community kitchen in Bermondsey, which trains unemployed people in City and Guilds catering qualifications and helps place them in the wider borough. We initiated a growing project with a local city farm. and we ran a community arts programme in partnership with the Old Vic Theatre. It wasn't all about funding though, so to support business and enterprise, for example, we initiated and ran a local economy group to help coordinate plans for the local high street, for example. And most recently, we founded a community forum who we are now working with to develop the next iteration of this plan. And I'll say a little bit more about that now. So there are, of course, numerous ways the development itself enables opportunities for the wider community, some of which you can see listed on the right-hand side there, and include much needed extra footfall and spending for the local high street, a new pedestrian connection through that huge railway border you saw to the south of our site, the new school, for example. But we also knew that such benefits don't automatically flow to local people. And so we've been thinking hard about what we can do now alongside the physical development to maximise those benefits for people living and working locally. And that led to the development of our social impact plan, which we are working on with the community forum, and it's called A Neighbourhood for Everyone. It has 3 aims: to create opportunities, in particular for young people to raise their aspirations and for local businesses to thrive. 2, to encourage inclusivity in everything we do to ensure the neighbourhood is enjoyed by people from different ethnic and socioeconomic backgrounds. And thirdly, to empower communities to have a meaningful involvement in the future of their neighbourhood. And it includes commitments against every aim. So, for example, at the moment, we are developing a mentoring programme to support future community leaders, which we are co-designing with the forum and an organisation called Locality. And one way we'll measure the impact of this plan and ultimately the development as a whole is through tracking personal and economic well-being in the neighbourhood, taking account of how people feel, what people want, the things that people need. And we already have a baseline for that, which this plan is designed in response to, having commissioned a comprehensive neighbourhood study with a local research organisation called Social Life, which involved interviews with over 500 residents, workers, and a peer-to-peer research element between 80 young people. And we'll be retesting against that baseline every few years and reporting on the outcomes as a means of holding ourselves and helping the community hold us to account. So hopefully that's given you a sense of how we've become a part of Bermondsey to date. Thank you very much for listening. We had a good look at your scoring criteria when preparing for this presentation, and so I've highlighted there the ESG criteria we believe we are delivering against. To conclude though, we thought you might enjoy listening to a few people from Bermondsey too.
Community that they try to conserve, especially within this regeneration time. This is actually the reason why I moved around here.
What I love about Bermondsey, it's a great community. The area's changing, but I think the spirit of Bermondsey will never change.
They're meeting the community, they're getting into the community, they're helping people to take part of the regeneration and understand. Thank you for this.
Lovely. Thank you very much indeed, Kate and Heather. You were already summing up when I was about to give you your 1-minute warning, so I didn't even need to. Thank you so much, and what a great way to end the presentation as well, with those comments. Judges, your time has come. If you can please switch your cameras back on so we can see you, Ben, I'm going to come to you first on this one. So initial thoughts and reactions, and then a question from you.
Thanks, Kate. Thanks, Heather. It's fascinating. And in the interest of full disclosure, I live around the corner and work around the corner in Southwark. So I'm taking personal interest in this one. But I wanted to ask something quite specific about sustainability and community engagement. I think there was a bold claim about zero carbon, which I assume means net zero, given that we breathe it out, and zero waste. And I just wondered, how does that resonate locally? How high up the agenda are those things, do you think, to the wider community, as well as, we know they're up the agenda in construction and what we do, what do local people have?
Yeah, I'll start us off there. So, yeah, it's a really interesting question. And to be frank, those commitments, I'm sure it won't be a surprise to you, are not driven by what we have heard locally through consultation necessarily, but through what we recognise as our wider commitments and in line with our own sort of corporate commitments in that space. And it's probably fair to say sustainability featured very minimally in what we heard locally through what people wanted and needed through the development. And I think it's probably just important context to, as you probably know, being so local, but the neighbourhood is one very much of stark polarity and not dissimilar to a lot of London, but a lot of the surrounding areas of the site are in the 20%, if not the 10% most deprived in the UK. So I think front of mind for a lot of the people living and working locally is more employment, jobs, family, have I got a house over my head? And certainly there are some interests in real practical day-to-day aspects of sustainability. So how green is my street? How much disruption and noise and potential pollution am I being exposed to? But it is, in the experience we had, quite immediate practical concerns, not necessarily something that's driving the sustainability ambitions for the development more widely.
And is it a factor of timing, do you think? Because I've been surprised during COVID that carbon sustainability has kind of risen in importance. I think it would have been an easy thing to sort of park and say, look, we've got more immediate concerns, which is perhaps what you're saying about the engagement exercise is, yes, we all want to act sustainably, but we've got real needs right now, and we want to hear about those. And I think what you said about trees is a really good example of where those two things might come together. So if there's a nice green space, increased urban greening, those two things start to work in harness. Is that fair? I don't know if that's a question or an observation.
Yeah,
I think that's right. I think that they do start to, you find that environmental outcomes are articulated in different ways. So yes, it's about public realm, the quality of the public realm. We often say that, and you'll experience as well, people won't necessarily articulate some of our environmental objectives in the same way we would in the industry. But when you're looking at the quality of daylight and the installation and cost of heating for properties, I mean, those are all part and parcel about what we're considering. It's just that the nature of how you have the conversation is sometimes different. Urban greening is absolutely part of what we're looking at, and on this site, how that's realised is in terms of greening of the streets and the number of trees that we'll be planting, but also one of the key community factors in the final scheme is a publicly accessible roof terrace that not only needs to be publicly accessible, we're actually looking at how do we soften the quality of that, both in landscape terms, but also think about what that can also simultaneously give back in terms of urban greening. You also hear about crossover in terms of impact on traffic on streets, right? And so, that's something that we hear in terms of engagement. And the outcome of that is a low carbon solution, which is ultimately we have a car-free scheme. I mean, there's public parking on the streets in the surrounding areas, but we won't be introducing new cars to the area. We'll be looking at how we promote cycling. So it does get introduced, I think, in different ways. But I would echo what Kate said, that in terms of big picture community priorities here, economic growth and support is a top one, as is affordability. And those are, until those are addressed, it's the conversation on other matters is more moderate.
Thank you. I think that answers the question, Ben. Vicky, I'd like to bring you in to follow up, if I may. Over to you.
I just wondered how, Bermondsey is obviously quite a special place in London. It's got a special identity. I just wondered if you felt that you'd reached those hard to reach communities of Bermondsey, and if you understood what their needs are and how you sort of implemented that in the scheme, other than what you've said, you've got community kitchens, but I suppose more physically.
Yeah, so absolutely, we will not have reached everyone we could have reached, and that despite the best efforts in the world, I think it's difficult to feel like you've really got there. What sort of was very clear to us from early on is there was a lot of, and there still is quite a lot of mistrust and scepticism about organisations like Grosvenor or any other developer coming into the neighbourhood and wanting to get to know people. And so our focus initially was very much on building a network of people that we could develop a trusting relationship with, who could spend the time with us to understand where we were coming from, what our interests were, and then working with those advocates, if you like, within the wider neighbourhood to help us tap into and reach wider communities as well. So it's been very much a network approach, and the forum that we've recently established as sort of more formal means to ensuring we're hearing from all the different communities that actually make up Bermondsey. Also has its own challenges in that we don't yet have every one of those different communities set around the table, and that's actually why we have commissioned this mentoring programme with Locality, because not only do we want an organisation like that to help us reach wider into the community, but we also know from the community representatives that are there that they actually need to build and develop those relationships as well. And so there's a bit of a sort of impetus, I think, coming from people like ourselves wanting to make sure we're reaching everyone that we need to reach and is a genuine part of that community, but also from the community leaders who are sort of typically more front of mind and visible in the community to make sure they are representing more widely the interests. So together, this programme, we hope will help us go some way to doing that. And there's been some quite interesting conversations around that already. For example, we've got a gospel hall around the corner who are really interested in understanding more about the community spaces we can offer and how they can be involved in the detailed design briefs for those. So I think the conversations, actually, as we move more into the detailed design, is now sort of getting a little more interesting and specific in a way that different user groups can really engage with as well.
This is quite
in physical,
isn't it?
Sorry, go ahead, Vicky.
I was just wondering, it's quite the timeline. It's quite early stage still. Is that right?
It depends on your perspective, I suppose. We've secured detailed planning for most of the site. We had a hybrid planning permission, but most of the site is in detail, and we are on site now with our demolition enabling works. We'll see our first completions in 2024. You specifically asked about sort of how community engagement manifests in terms of the physical design. I guess there's one really key. But there are a few different key important plays in that. The first is really opening up this site. There's great affection and a history of the people in the surrounding areas and historic working patterns on the site that haven't been in existence for many years. So reopening up, making sure it's very outward facing in terms of the development. In fact, sort of the first move towards the community is a large play area. That will be a key point of interaction between any new residents and people locally. The secondary school will be the first building completed on the site. So it's a new building for an existing school that's relocating, and that will open in 2023, sorry, before our housing. So those are important plays. And then also the relationship, we talked about economic growth, the relationship between the new development and the existing local centre, which is south of the railway line, is important. And so trying to improve the physical connections between the new development and the area south of the railway line is also an important move that's really critical, I think, in terms of how we can make sure that there's connections and integration between the communities. And I suppose just to demonstrate how that played out, when we went to planning committee last year, there were people who we had everyone from the local bid, the chair of governors at the secondary school, chairs of residents associations actually speaking out at the planning committee in favor of the development, which I think is a testament to the work that the sort of long-standing relationships that have been built up, and also how the development proposals have actually responded.
Thank you very much. I'm terribly sorry, but we've run out of time on this session. We could chat for much longer, I know. Apologies, Amina. I will bring you in next time first, I promise. Thank you so much, Kate and Heather. Really fascinating. And as you can tell, we've still got loads of questions, and we'd love to find out more. But we have to make a break here, I'm afraid. So thank you very much indeed for sharing that. It's now time to move on to our final contender of the morning. So we are off to Berkshire, the Nicholson Quarter in Maidenhead. So this project was about transforming a 1960s shopping centre into a mixed-use master plan, and involved community planning, weekends, workshops, social media, an app, post, telephone, the full spectrum. So I'm very pleased to welcome our presenters, Marcus Adams from JTP, but a very special welcome to Fizz and Maleeka, who are members of the community. We're really delighted to have you here. So thank you very much indeed for giving up your time to join us. We really appreciate it. So presenting team, I'm going to hand over to you. I'm going to be keeping an eye on the stop clock, so don't mind me when I pop in and give you a reminder at 1 minute to go. We look forward to hearing from you and to fielding some questions from the judges. So thank you very much, and over to
Hello, Pineapple Awards, judges on the panel and people listening today. My name is Maleeka Abbas, and this is my mum, Fizz. We are local residents of Maidenhead, and we've been working with JTP on the redevelopment of our local town centre. Now, let me ask you, how often is it that one gets a chance to redevelop a whole entire town centre?
No.
It's a once-in-a-century opportunity, and, well, that's why we're here. Now, I will be talking more in depth about this later on in the presentation, but for now, let me give it to my mum here, and she'll introduce everyone because I'm not very good at PowerPoints.
You hate PowerPoints, don't you?
No.
So I'm Fizz, and I'm so honoured to bring on Marcus Adams, Charles Champion, and Will Robinson. I think it's Will that's going to be talking, or is it Marcus? But I'll hand it over to you, JTP.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm going to pass over to Will just to introduce about Areli, and then to Marcus to talk about a little bit about JTP. And our phone's going as well at the moment.
Okay. So I'm Will Robinson, the Development Director at Areli Real Estate. We're a business that was formed by Rob Tinknell, who was previously Chief Executive of Battersea Power Station. A scheme that will be known to many of you, and is obviously very well known for the placemaking qualities, and they are central to the culture at Areli and are central to the development of the Nicholson shopping centre. But placemaking to us is much more than just buildings and spaces. It's about creating communities, strong, socially sustainable communities, which is of absolute paramount importance to us. And that starts with the community engagement, but that continues on through the curation of a retail mix that's authentic and distinctive and responds to the wants and needs and desires of the local population. All of that, this process formed part of our community engagement, understanding what people wanted their town centre to be in the future. Because it is really important to understand that to us, the town centres, and to residents, the town centre is the heartbeat of the community. So we are absolutely committed to engagement. It's a key part of the development process for us, the most important part, to create places where people want to live, work and play.
Thank you. Do you want to say about JTP?
Yeah, and I'm Marcus Adams here from JTP. We're architects and master planners. We've worked with our client before. I think the idea of establishing what type of place that we want to create. And I think we started this community planning process prior to COVID, but actually I think the proposal and the vision that has emerged from the community seems all more relevant now, posing the question that Meek said at the start, which is what do we want from our town centres? Next one.
So the process that we undertake, and we've been running community planning processes for over 25 years, and it's really all about engagement and feedback loops. The idea that the community are involved in a process that's similar to the process that we go through as designers. So it's an open design, co-design process. research from the States shows that you need at least three feedback loops to develop trust and true engagement. So our process over what turned out to be around 2 years, as you can see from the timeline at the bottom, went from publicity and launch of the process, obviously, through to the next slide, please, which is the community animation, going out and talking to people and understanding the community and place, and getting into the community wherever they are. The whole range, you can see a whole list of groups and people that we visited and engaged and informed about the community planning weekend, so that when the community planning weekend came along, next slide please, we had over 500 people engaged in a truly iterative co-design process, sitting down with us as the designers, with the developers, talking about all the difficult issues, talking about people's concerns, their dreams and their aspirations, and then actually sitting down and drawing them. We had walkabout groups with local communities showing us the wider town and the town centre. There's the town centre manager fully engaged. And over 5 days, we developed a vision for the town centre. Marcus will take you through that.
Okay, so as I said at the start, the post-COVID role of our town centres, and in this case, what was an obsolete 1960s low-rise shopping centre, which formed a physical barrier to movement and connections through the town. And what we heard very, very strongly from people is that they wanted something that was authentic, uniquely Maidenhead, a place that had active streets and had public spaces and created a heart for Maidenhead. So the next slide really is the vision was developed immediately after the community planning event, was reported back 4 days later to the community, and then, as Charles said, we had various feedback loops. But the idea here was that we reduced significantly the amount of floor space, 50% less floor space. We had 2.5 times more units on ground floor with flexible terms, white box fit out, all focused around new streets and spaces, a new public square that was named by the community, providing a new heart, and then on the upper floors, workspace and living accommodation. I think all of this is really the idea of restitching, reconnecting other initiatives, and Maidenhead is a town with a lot of change going on, linking into the new heart, the new square that's sat in the centre. And you can see the various initiatives here, introducing biodiversity into there. We've got over almost 170 trees within the scheme, new streets that have all been carefully modelled to get sunlight into new public spaces, and actually a support for an increase of density within the town centre, which is accessible, with a view that we're really making best use of land in this sustainable location as options to elsewhere. Next one. Okay, so following the report back of that vision through the 5-6 day charrette process, which is an incredibly effective way of designers, the professional team engaging with the community, we had a strong support and carried on through a whole range of processes, continuing meetings with other groups, and obviously the local business community was key. We met with the local disability forum. Meeks will tell you the work that we did with her, looking at visual disability, and we had a whole range of exhibitions. And so again, we continued to develop the engagement. People came along. We talked about what the heights of the building should be. Did people want to see the town centre redevelopment happening in one stage to hit it fast, or should it be in different stages over a longer period of time? Next, please. And then towards the end of the process, around the time that the planning application was submitted, we again sent a newsletter to the whole community. Over 25,000 newsletters went out. We had a fantastic response, showing that real awareness of what was going on. It's a transformative scheme, as Marcus says, very dense, very different to what's there at the moment, high, and 82% support, which led to a unanimous verdict at the planning committee. It was fantastic for the town, and we've been following that up with a whole range of website and app activity to continue the engagement. Next, please. Yeah, over to Meeks and Fizz.
Hi again, guys. Go on, Maleeka.
So I'm a visually impaired young person and a member of the Maidenhead community. And we've been working with JTP, as I said. So why do I love JTP and what they're doing? Well, I have a physical challenge, a disability, and especially as a young person, it's really hard to be heard sometimes. But with JTP, I felt that they've taken the initiative, they've been inclusive and innovative. They've taken the time to hear me out, to listen to my thoughts and opinions, and they've even gotten first-hand experience. They let me lead one of their senior architects around town blindfolded to get a first-hand experience of what shopping's like as a person with a disability or physical challenge. And they took that information on board and they used it to make. They used this information to do the right. Sorry.
To put it into their plan.
So yeah, they use this information into their plan, and now they're getting us. Now they're.
Oh, bless you,
Sorry,
Maleeka. She's a bit nervous, bless her. So Maleeka, how do you think being involved with JTP has helped you as a young person?
As I said, in society, it's hard for people like me to be heard, and usually it feels as if there's a gap between us. There's a gap between the people who are doing all these big jobs and changes, and the people who are probably minorities, but they need little accessibility features or features that can help them. And the fact that I was able to be given my voice, and the fact that I was able to speak to them and given that platform to do so, actually feels like I'm making an impact, which means the world to me. Because as a young person, this is going to be my future, and as someone with a disability, it's going to impact me a lot. And the fact that JTP are going to take this on board and make town more accessible is going to help out so many people. And honestly, I don't feel like many companies consider this angle. And the fact that JTP are is just, it shows a lot about their views and their vision and how they want to bring this kind of feeling of community and inclusivity together in Maidenhead. And that's what makes Maidenhead special to me, because we've actually got that kind of force behind us. And yeah, it's special.
So we had actually plans of moving out of Maidenhead, but we stayed put just because of our involvement with Maidenhead and the fact that the future's looking great, isn't it?
It definitely is.
And the fact that Maleeka is a visually impaired person, she's very dependent on technology. So JTP have actually taken the initiative to actually add features of technology in Maidenhead, so her experience will be great. So she doesn't want to hang out with me. She's a teenager now, so she can actually go into Maidenhead herself, and I can probably track you and see where you're going and enjoying herself.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you very much indeed, and we really appreciate that. And you did fantastic, Maleeka. Thank you very much indeed for your contribution. I have no doubt that our judges have got loads of questions to follow up with. So I'm going to hand over to Amina first, and if I can ask the judges to just switch their cameras back on so we can see your faces. And we look forward to your thoughts and your question, Amina.
Hello, Maleeka, thank you. That was a great presentation, and thanks to the developers as well. I wanted to first just give a comment. My work is involved with young people and with youth, and I think this idea of going to young people and getting their views is not just important for those young people, but I think it makes it better for everyone. It's sort of like the work of getting, politicians or other people to understand that just because they can't vote and don't pay taxes doesn't mean that children don't matter. I think it's actually the opposite. If you look towards the future, there's going to be more and more children living in cities. Our did a study, they said that by 2030, the majority of the world's population in cities will be children 18 and younger. And so I think this move towards not just in a superficial way, including the thoughts of children and young people, but actually having it have an impact, amending a design and improving it for everyone is just something I wanted to just take a moment to give a lot of kudos to. So thanks for that. I have a question about the open design feedback loop. In the visual, you all showed that there's a 3 feedback loop, but I couldn't see very well. It was a little bit small. Can you share maybe an example of how that worked from start to finish and what those 3 loops were?
Yeah, I don't know if it's meant to be taken quite that literally in a sense. The idea is that if you ask people for their input, you then need to report back and give them another chance, because you never get it right first time, to paraphrase Andreas Dwani from the States. And it's the same when we design things internally. We have to keep going at it. So if you just think that asking people once is going to be satisfactory, it's not, and you'll alienate people. Actually, it's probably worse than not doing it at all. So the feedback loops happen in all sorts of different ways. They happen within the community planning weekend, because we run more than one hands-on planning group session, and the ideas build on themselves as the different groups report back. The good ideas are reinforced, the bad ideas fall away gently without putting anyone's noses out. The feedback loops happen also in terms of the event, because it's a 5-day process. We've got walkabouts, 2 days of workshops, team working, the feeding back at the end of that, the report back on the Tuesday night. So people have got a chance to see the vision. They can then comment on that. Then we would have exhibitions and other forums following on from that, as you saw in the presentation. And then, of course, the feedback, in a sense, through the statutory planning process is something obviously that the council handle. But by the end of the process, we've had many discussions and fine-tuned the proposals. That's what the feedback loops are about. It's not meant to be taken quite so literally, but
I think the whole feeling of participation as being something different than consultation is fundamental to this. That actually we're not asking people necessarily, at the outset, to comment on something. They are co-designing with us. So, from the community planning event, the report back, we had feedback to, as Charles said, during that process, then to our initial vision and emerging ideas. We then had two further exhibitions, which were sort of key milestones over a year process, where people were then able to look specifically at detailed issues, and they got finer and finer as we moved towards the planning application. In between that, we've got various representative groups, both formal statutory ones and informal civic groups, looking at other key topics. So we see this as being really an ongoing process from that first event and the first animation.
I think it's also about recognising that not everyone wants to participate in the same way. But we believe that by engaging people in actually the co-design, that's the kind of the core of what we're doing. And other people can be involved in a less sort of focused way, through exhibitions, through reading newsletters, through seeing press articles, etc. So it's just recognising the realities of life, but also giving people that opportunity to get really involved. And we don't just focus on civic societies, etc. It's, as you've seen from Maleeka, it's actually giving everyone in the community that opportunity.
Wonderful. It sounds like it's more organic in that way.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm keeping one eye on time, so Ben, over to you for your question.
Thanks, and thanks everyone. That was a really interesting and amazing to see. Thanks. Good to see some local people as well and hear from them directly, which we haven't done yet today. I just wanted to ask about the digital tools, the impact of COVID. We've heard a lot this morning, and from our own experience, found that digital means of outreach have actually increased participation and engagement, and particularly in different age groups. As you say, not everyone will come to an exhibition or even a 5-day event, but lots of people will give you 5 minutes online. So how did you sort of adapt to changing circumstance and use those digital tools to reach more people?
As Marcus said, the community planning weekend happened pre-COVID. That was in March 2019. So we subsequently had all those exhibitions online. COVID happened, obviously, 23rd of March, we locked down into 2020. By then, a lot of the work had been done, but we'd set up the website and the apps. But I suppose the way that, obviously, people could see the development of the proposals through that method. But also recognising that hard copy is very important. So we released, as you saw on the slide, 25,000 plus newsletters to the whole community. There was work through the local media as well. And in that way, people could either fill in online or with real postcards, which people could fill in and send back. We actually had people thanking us, ringing up and thanking us specifically for doing hard copy consultation. One lady with arthritis who said she can't work her keyboard anymore. So it's recognising that balance, and we had that response that you saw. So I think people were generally, in this process, given the time span, were very much aware of what was going on and could be involved in the fine tuning. In other projects, not this one, that balance of digital and hard copy, face to face, is crucial to get right. You can't just rely on digital, as I'm sure you know, and that's something that's very much come out. So we're keen to do face to face things when we can.
But I think that combination of different mediums to reach people is we've seen the advantage of that, and I think we had a specially designed app, Nicholson Quarter app, that was available, is still running now, that people can access information, provide feedback on, which is a much as well as a website, as well as various animation that can access. But I think, strangely enough, actually the free postcard was really effective. As you saw on there, we ended up with an awful lot of
piles
on the desk, which is strange. And we were surprised by the positive take-up of that. So maybe going forward, there's a combination of all of these things, rather than a single silver bullet.
But certainly at the outset, I think what we recognise the developer, that face-to-face community engagement at the outset is really, really important. When you're shaping the proposals, the blank piece of paper, the downloading of ideas, that is something that we feel is incredibly effective on a face-to-face basis.
We have been developing that approach, online, concept board, Miro, etc. But it doesn't beat the face-to-face. So it's horses for courses. We do what we can when we can. But no doubt the digital is here to stay. And I think getting that breadth of input is very useful. And we can feed that into our community planning weekends, our charrettes, and then out the other side, and we can do live streams, etc. But out the other side as well, it's helpful to get feedback on the vision. But that sort of co-design face-to-face is a key moment.
And builds trust, and I think that's really important. In terms of community engagement, it builds trust, and face-to-face again is a much more effective way of building that trust and transparency. So there is the potential. We can use various mediums, but we still are big supporters as a business of face-to-face engagement.
Thank you very much. The clock has been ticking, and I'm afraid our time has run out. Thank you so much to JTP and to Fizz and Maleeka. Lovely presentation, full of energy and lots of really interesting details for our judges to deliberate. Thank you also to all of our presenters from this morning, and to our learned judging panel, and of course to our audience members as well. We really appreciate your input and your encouraging emojis and so on. I'm now going to be taking the judges away to a quiet room so that they can deliberate and debate and ultimately decide on the winner. Their decision is going to remain top secret until Friday, when we'll find out who has won that golden pineapple. For our audience, now is the time for you to go and enjoy our lunchtime talk with Dr. Daniela Meliandri at 1 o'clock, and that's going to be on designing a Div Air city where diversity and equality meets public health. So some really good food for thought over lunch. Between sessions, do remember that you can pop in and join a table in the lounge, and you can meet some of the other people here and have a bit of a conversation. So do take advantage of that as well. So thanks again to everyone who's been involved this morning, and I hope you enjoy this afternoon's content as well. Thank you very much.